So today we have verses 3, 4, 5, and 6 of chapter 17 lined up. I'll start with verse number 3. I will chant. सत्त्वानुरूप सर्वस्य श्रद्धा भवति भारत श्रद्धामयोऽयं पुरुषो यो यच्छ्रद्ध स एव च. So the verse translates to the Shraddha, which we are translating faith. So the Shraddha or faith of each is in accordance to one's nature, O Bharata. A human is made up of this faith. One is verily what is one's Shraddha. Let's take this up word by word. Sattvanurupa. So Anurup is according to Swatah is one's nature. So Sattvanurupa becomes according to one's nature. Sarvasya of all. Shraddha is faith. Bhavati his is. Bharat is a name that Krishna is using for Arjun, which means the best specimen of the Bharat race, or the descendant of this great Bharat race. Shraddha mein consists of Shraddha. I am this. Purush is man. I am translating it to human. Ya, who, yat, that. Shraddha is faith. Is. So yat shraddha becomes that which one's faith is. Sa, one. A, verily. Saha is. So the Shraddha of each is in accordance to one's nature, O Bharata. A human being is made up of this faith. One is verily what is one's Shraddha or faith. So let's chant it together. Sattvanurupa sarvasya Shraddha bhavati
भारत
श्रद्धामयोऽयं पुरुषो यो यच्छ्रद्ध स एव स. So Arjun asks a question in verse number 1 that what happens, how do you classify the people who worship but don't follow the scriptures? So to which Lord Krishna had detailed in the previous verse that they also, that Shraddha can be classified into 3 categories, and that is Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic. So, couple of things which we had done last time, but nevertheless, as we are covering these set of verses, we need to go back to that Shraddha or faith in an individual is a result of one's own vasanas or tendencies or nature. One thing. Second, Shraddha is our inner force, our inner vitality, which is a result of our vasanas and our values, and it propels us to choose our path and also to perform in that path towards that goal. So Shraddha consequently provides us with a consistency of purpose. So the important point while we are discussing the verses of the Bhagavad Gita, Shraddha is normally associated with religion, but actually it's not that. It is referring to our inner value system and our inner vitality, right? Which is making us act in the world. Now, all human beings have Shraddha. A person who does not have Shraddha will not be dynamic, because Shraddha, we are equating it to the inner vitality, the inner dynamism. So we now have understood that our faith, which is a result of our convictions, we decide to place it in something. So in whatever holds value or meaning to us, gives us meaning. So our faith shapes the direction of all our activities and therefore our entire life. So, for example, people for whom money is the most important thing, they will spend their entire life trying to gather money or earning it. For whom fame is the most important thing, they will dedicate their time and energy in chasing political posts or, social designations or whatever, wherever you get that fame. So naturally, we function best in that field in which our Shraddha lies or our faith lies. And here I would like to recollect. See, the corollary of this statement, of this verse, actually, we have covered in the Karma Yoga chapter. And I will draw your attention to the verse number 35 of Karma Yoga chapter, chapter 3, where you may recollect at the functional level. There we were talking how to operate in the world, how to function in the world. So at the functional level, Lord Krishna had told Arjuna that better is Swadharma. Swadharma, there we talked about as one's own duty. Okay, so better is Swadharma, one's own duty, though devoid of merit, than Pardharma, that means duty of another, well discharged. Better is death in Swadharma, Pardharma is fraught with fear. So let's take up this verse, which is actually a direct result of the current verse that we are reading. So there we were advised by the Lord that as an adult, as an individual, we should choose our vocation, which is in line with our vasanas, and that is called Swadharma. That is what will lead to the prosperity, mental peace, and our personality will flourish. Pardharma, that means if we take up a vocation which is against my nature, against my vasanas, then because I work against my vasanas or my inherent tendencies, my progress will be retarded and I'll be mentally agitated. It's something that I don't want to do. So, as an individual, I will not blossom, neither materially nor spiritually. So that verse had said that therefore it is better to eat the worst in Swadharma than gloating over achievements in Pardharma. And also that was a parenting tip which we had discussed at that point of time, that parents tend to push their children in Pardharma because of the suitability or the convenience. Because, if you are a family of doctors, you already have a big hospital, so the child should try and become a doctor so that they can join. Or if you have a business house, you want the child to become a business person, or because the IT professionals are getting paid more, therefore you should go into that line. Or these days it's AI, which is the cynosure. So take up a job in AI. So that's how we tend to push children, and that is something which that verse was cautioning, not only for ourselves but even for our children. Now here in this verse, Krishna is saying the same thing, because the quality of our faith determines the direction of our life, and the quality of faith is determined by the nature of our vasanas. Therefore, faith defines a person. So this was verse number 3. Moving on to verse number 4. Yajante satvika devan yaksharakshansi rajasa प्रेतान् भूतगणाश्चान्ये यजन्ते तामसा जनाः. So this verse translates to: the sattvic or the pure worship gods, Dev; Rajasic, the yakshas, which are demigods, and Rakshasas, the demons. Others, tamasic, worship ghosts and spirits. So let's take this up word by word. Yajante is worship. Satvika, the Satvik. Devan is gods. Yakshar, Rakshansi is Yakshas and Rakshasas. Rajasa is the Rajasic. Pretan is ghosts. Bhoot Ganan is hosts of spirits. Cha and Anya others, Yajante worship. Tamasa, Tamasic Jana is people. So the Satvik worship gods. Rajasic, Yakshas and Rakshasas. Others, Tamasic worship ghosts and spirits. Let's chant it together. Yajante satvika devan yakshrakshasi rajasa pretan bhutaganaschanye yajante tamasa jana. So Krishna has already told us that Shraddha or faith is of three kinds: Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic. And here this verse is elaborating the three ways in which a devotee worships. Now, when we talk of worship, again, let's not stick to the religious definition. We are talking about actually everything that we do. So, worship has a wider implication. And the worship, this worship that we do is propelling us and our conduct in the world. And each one of us is a worshipper at the altar or the goal that we have chosen. So even when atheists, they say that they don't believe in God, okay, they are worshiping. They are worshiping the existence of no God, or maybe they're devoted to themselves or to the sense objects. So and that is what is propelling their conduct in the world. So every human being has a shraddha, and that leads to our actions at all levels, body, mind, and intellect, which is what we are calling as worship, into the world. So each one of us directs our shraddha, faith, towards our goal, whatever we are worshipping. So if I'm worshipping money, I will start with my day with money and end my day with money, and I will be trying to only think of making money. Now, persons of Sattvic temperament, who are, if you may recollect, when we had done the gunas, they're serene and poised. They understand the supreme reality, that one God, and they also understand that this great power manifests itself in many different powers, which they call as gods, the various gods. So the various gods that they worship represent the power of that supreme reality which is manifested. Now, you may recollect chapter 10, Vibhuti Yoga chapter, or the Yoga of Supreme Manifestation, where the Lord Krishna had made Arjun understand his Vibhuti in all that is created. So that one God or that Brahman manifests itself in all the beings and creation. So gods refer to the various powers that sustain us, or various characteristics of that unmanifest Brahman that manifest themselves in the universe. So they here refer to the entire sphere of human activities. So some may choose a particular line of action. So some of you may be lawyers, others may be artists. So whatever you choose. And then you set your goals in your life and in your chosen activity. So the Dev here are referring to the smaller ideals or the smaller goals or the relative goals that we are setting for ourselves. And the typical examples that we can take up here are that if I am seeking knowledge, I will start worshipping Goddess Saraswati. If I want success in all my endeavors, Ganesh. If I want wealth, I'll worship Lakshmi. For nourishment, I will maybe worship sun god, etc. So, different manifestations is what I turn my worship towards. What is it that clicks with me or is in tune with my vasanas and with my nature? So the Sattvic people worship gods as they work towards selfless goals. So the key is the Sattvic people have goals which are set towards the larger benefit of the humanity. They are in line with the actions that were the technique of right action that was covered in chapter 3, 4, and 5 that we had talked. So they work towards selfless goals. Now the Rajasics. So that finishes the Sattvic bit. People. Coming to the Rajasic. The Rajasic, what are the hallmarks of a Rajasic person? They are passionate, greedy, envious, desire ridden, and therefore agitated. So they worship yakshas, demigods, and rakshasas, demons. Now, in our scriptures, yakshas and rakshasas are ugly, monstrous creatures, and they symbolize materialistic and sensual nature. And again, in chapter 10, you may recollect in the Vibhuti Yoga chapter when Krishna was identifying with with the best in each field, Lord Krishna had identified with Vitesha or Kuber or the Lord of Wealth amongst the Yakshas and Rakshasas. So you can go back and check this out. Now, Yakshas and Rakshasas are traditional enemies of the Devas. And our texts talk of the constant rife between the two. Now, the Rajasic people who are of passionate nature and are extremely ambitious set their goals that are selfish in the chosen field of activity. So, because they work towards selfish activity, they have selfish goals, they worship the Yakshas and the Rakshasas that symbolize materialism and sensuality. Now, the tamasic, the hallmark of a tamasic person is indolent, lazy, most importantly, ignorant and deluded. They invoke the ghosts and the spirits. Okay, so now the ghosts and the spirits, we don't literally have to see them as ghosts and so on and so forth. But here, what it means is people of low caliber. So, or false education. Because what happens, the amsic people have evil ambitions, and that will be supported only by people of the lowest rung of the society. And, so like contract killers, gundas, and thugs. So that is the kind of level that they operate at. And also, so this is the three kinds of worship that people do, the activities that people do, or the actions that propel people in the world: sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. Now, another important thing to consider at this point of time is that the Lord Krishna, throughout the Bhagavad Gita, has been repeatedly saying that the Supreme God, that God, the reality, one God, maintains our faith, and God supports us in whatever form or gods or demigods or whatever we choose to worship. And so I will draw your attention to the previous chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, and I will just read out the verses, some set of verses, so that this thing kind of rests with us that we are getting what we have asked for. Actually, we keep some of us think, no, that ये भगवान मैंने ऐसा मेरे को ऐसा क्यों मिल रहा है, मैंने ऐसा क्या किया. The point is that we forget all that has happened so far, or all that we have done so far. So when the results come in front of us, it is completely in line with what we have been doing. So we should not get agitated at that point of time. So I will quote certain verses. This is chapter 7, the Jnana Vigyan Yoga, verses 20 to 23. So verse number 20 of chapter 7. Those devoid of wisdom approach other gods through various material desires, resorting to corresponding rites led by their own nature. Verse number 21 goes on to say, whatever form a devotee seeks to worship with Shraddha, I steady the Shraddha in that form. Verse number 22 of the same chapter, endowed with that Shraddha, he seeks the worship of that form, and from that he fulfills his desires. These have been granted by me alone. Verse number 23 of the same chapter, perishable indeed is the fruit to those of small intelligence. The worshippers of the gods go to the gods. Likewise, my devotees reach me. And actually, so this was chapter 7. In chapter 8, then we had talked about the cycle of return and no return. So the preset is here in this verse. Then I thought of quoting three more verses from chapter 9, the Raja Vidya Raja Goya Yog. So, verse number 23 of chapter 9. Even those devotees who endowed with Shraddha worship other gods, they also worship me alone, O Kaunteya, though contrary to the traditional practice. 24 says that I am indeed the enjoyer and also the Lord of all the yajna, but they, that means the worshippers, do not know me in reality, hence they fall. And verse 25 goes on to say the same thing that we had just recapped for verse number one of the verses of chapter 7. Worshippers of devas go to devas, worshippers of ancestors go to ancestors, worshipper of elements go to elements, and those who worship me come to me. Me meaning the supreme reality. So this was verse number 4. Let's move on to verse number 5. I'll chant. अशास्त्रविहितं घोरं तप्यन्ते ये तपोजना दम्भहङ्कारसंयुक्ताः कामरागबलान्विताः. So the verse translates to those who practice terrible austerity, not enjoined by the scripture, with hypocrisy and egoism, possessed by the power of lust and attachment. And of course, the thought completes in the next verse, but we'll take them separately. So let's take this up word by word. Ashastra Vihitam. So Shastra is what the scriptures say. Ashastra Vihitam becomes which the scriptures are not calling for or not enjoined by the scriptures. Ghor is terrible. Tapyante, practice. Yehu, tapah is austerity. Jana, people. Damb, ahankar is sayukt. So damb is hypocrisy. Ahankar is egoism. Sayukt is united with. So dam, ahankar, sayukta becomes those who possess with or have hypocrisy and egoism. Kam, rag, balanvita becomes possessed by the power of lust and attachment. So the verse translates to those who practice terrible austerity, not enjoined by the scripture, with hypocrisy and egoism, possessed by the power of lust and attachment. So let's chant it together. Ashastra vihitam ghoram tapyante ye tapojana damba hankar sanyukta kamaraga balanvita. So now, what is tap? Tap is physical austerities, or whatever we try to control at the physical level. And also, please understand that you may recollect chapter 8, where we had talked about that even the mind, both the gross body and the body and the subtle body. So that means our body, mind, and intellect all are formed or part of the material layer. So they actually are part of that matter. So When we talk of tapa, which is physical austerities, we are talking about austerities at the material layers of body, mind, and intellect. And what does tap mean? Tap means we work consistently towards a set goal, whatever is the goal that we have set for ourselves. So, for example, if someone wants to win a beauty pageant, she, or even for men, they will be, that person would be very, very careful about what they are consuming, what they're eating, their exercise regime, what they are wearing, and anything which takes them out of that path from this regimen, they will not do. They will ignore it, they will reject it. So they consistently work towards their goal, which is to win the beauty pageant. Someone is a tennis player and wants to win the state tournament. He or she will forego all the social occasions, and whatever time that is available apart from studies would be spent in the practice of the tennis that he or she wants to play and win. So this is tap. This is what the physical austerity. So we are controlling our body, mind, and intellect to have thoughts of only the beauty pageant or the tennis tournament and so on and so forth. Now, the goal is based on our shraddha, which in turn is a result of our vasanas, right? So the wise, the ones who are intelligent, choose not to do certain activities or reject them which violate their goal or which are contrary to their goal, because they know the goal and they want to move only in the direction of their goal. So this verse 5 and the next verse are actually talking about the austerities of people who have a demonic resolve. So why do they have a demonic resolve? Because they are overpowered by desire for what they do not possess, and they are horribly attached or indiscriminately attached to what they do possess, right? So you're always yearning for something that you don't have. So maybe a farmhouse somewhere in South Delhi, and you're attached to what you possess. So my family, my spouse, my child, these possessions. So both these are what give rise to desires within us. So such people are egoistic by nature and they lead hypocritical lives because they try to impress others with what they are not actually. Hence, they are overpowered by hypocrisy, egoism, lust, and attachment, which is what the verse is saying. And they start practicing austerities which are contrary to the scriptures. This results in fatiguing, tiring the body, mind, and intellect with uncalled for activities, thoughts, worries, and anxieties. And the person tends or is inclined towards terrible austerities which the scripture is not asking for, and their efforts now carry them in the wrong direction. With that, let's move on to verse number 6. कर्षन्त शरीरस्थं भूतग्रामं चेतसः मां चैत्वान्तशरीरस्थं तान् वेद्यासुरनिश्चयान्. So the verse translates to torturing the elements in the body senseless, and even me embodied within, know them to be of demonic resolve. word by word. Karshant, torturing. Sharirastham is within the body. Bhoot Gramam. So Bhoot here is referring to the elements, the five great elements, Panchamahabhut. Bhoot Gramam, so group of elements. Achetasaha. So Chet is, or Chetana is when we are in our senses. Achetasa becomes senseless. Mam is me, that supreme reality, that power, Brahman. Cha and Ev even. Antaha Sharirastham. So within the body or embodied within. Tan them. Vidhi no. Asur is demonic. Nishchayan resolves. So the verse translates to torturing the elements in the body senseless, and even me embodied within, know them to be of demonic resolve. So let's chant it together. Kashyanta sharirastham bhutagramam chetasa Mam chetvanta sharirastham tani vidya sur nishchayan. So the demonic is practicing the austerities indiscriminately. And let's look at, when we're talking of these physical austerities uh, indiscriminately, let's take some examples. These are examples of when we are subjecting ourselves to extreme discomfort. So, extreme fasting for extended periods of time, sitting on a bed of nails, walking on fire, self flagellation, all these are examples of giving our body extreme discomfort. And you will find examples of them in many religious texts. Now, overindulgence, these are all overindulgences actually in our austerities. So, overindulgences in tapas is prompted by our desires, and overdoing a thing can only produce physical exhaustion and an internal fatigue. So, even when you go for, let's say, you don't go to the gym normally and then you start visiting the gym, so the trainer will tell you to take it easy, do 15 minutes here or maybe a 10 minutes cycle on something. If you were to go the first day at the gym and do 1.5 or 2 hours of gym workout, you will be completely exhausted, not only physically but also mentally. You'll tire out. What the verse is saying, that no spiritual unfoldment can be expected from unintelligent expenditure of energy. And you've been reading the Bhagavad Gita. God has nowhere asked for such extreme austerities from from the seeker. He just says that think of me with consistency. At all times, just think of me. That's it. He's not saying that you sit on a bed of nails and then think of me. You walk on fire and then think of me. No, he's not saying that. The Lord has been saying that just consistently rest your mind on me and try to reach me. And I'm sure most of the other religious texts would also be saying the same thing. So, God is not asking for these senseless austerities, and harsh and unintelligent austerities not only oppress or, distress the elements, the five great elements that constitute our body, but the body is also housing the self, that Paramatman within us. So, I mean, you can say that even the self is affected by that. However, this is a note here that the self is always a sakshi, is a witness, is not actually affected by anything. So, by our physical austerities, the self cannot be tortured. What the verse means is that in that state of mind and physical discomfort, we cannot even center our thoughts or think of that Paramatman. So, the self is obscured. So the verse is saying that the senseless austerities that are practiced with lust, attachment, hypocrisy, and ego cover or hide or veil the self within, which is within each one of us. So that person becomes choked, as it were, is not able to express himself or herself to its to their fullest capacity, and through such a distressed form, you cannot do that. So the verse is actually condemning extreme tap and intelligent control of tap. Intelligent control is tap actually, and self torture is not tap. So this is what we are talking about, the Shraddha, and how the Shraddha is leading us into the world and to act within the world, right? And with that, we have done the threefold, we end the threefold description of Shraddha. And next time we will talk about food, ahar, how the ahar is also threefold. So let's conclude our today's session. I'll just stop the recording.